All right, let's jump right in. Today we're talking about a concept that's kind of like a secret weapon for building technology, from the simplest apps all the way to the most complex AI. It's built around one really simple but powerful idea. Stop starting from scratch. And we're going to break down what that really means and why it's completely changing the game. Seriously, just think about that for a second. Imagine, every time you kick off a new project, you're not staring at a blank screen. Instead, you have this whole toolbox full of powerful, super reliable components just waiting for you. What could you build if you had that kind of a head start?
Well, that dream of not constantly reinventing the wheel, it has a name. It's called reusable intelligence. It's the practice of building things right once and then using them over and over and over again. So let's dig into what that actually is.
So let's get specific. What are we actually talking about here? Let's get past the buzzword and figure out what reusable intelligence really means.
Okay, so here's the official definition. The key word here is designing. This isn't accidental. It's about being intentional. You're not just building something for one specific task. You're creating it from day one, thinking about the future, making sure someone else can just pick it up and plug it in somewhere else without a ton of work.
And if you want to boil this whole thing down to just one simple idea, it's this: building blocks. That's it. That's the key. Think about it like Legos, right? You use the same basic bricks to build a house or a car or a giant spaceship. That's the kind of power we're talking about here. But this isn't just some abstract high-level theory. It shows up in the real world in some very concrete ways. And usually, it falls into one of three main categories. Let's take a look.
First up, AI components. And this is a huge one right now. Think about the big large language models out there. Companies aren't building an entirely new model from the ground up for every single product. No way. They're taking these incredibly powerful pre-trained models as their starting building block, and then they just fine-tune them for what they need.
Second, you've got reusable software components. Now, this is a classic idea, something software engineers have been doing for a long time. If you've ever noticed that the login button or the drop-down menu looks and feels exactly the same across a company's entire suite of apps, well, you've seen this in action. They build it once, and then they reuse it everywhere.
And third, and this one is absolutely critical for AI, is reusable data. You need high-quality, clean, well-structured data that you can use to train model after model after model reliably. This is where things like the fair data principles come in, making your data findable, accessible, interoperable, and of course, reusable. When you get this right, you've built a solid foundation for everything that comes next.
Okay, so we get what it is, we see what it looks like in the wild, but so what? Why does this matter so much? Why is this approach considered a total game changer for so many companies and developers?
Well, it really all boils down to 5 massive benefits. And these benefits make this philosophy more than just a nice to have. It's a real strategic advantage.
The payoff here is huge. First, accelerated development. Obviously, because your teams aren't starting from zero every time. That naturally leads to reduced costs. You're not paying people to solve the same problem over and over. Then, there's improved consistency and quality. Your stuff just works better and feels more cohesive. Reusability also makes it way easier to scale up, and maybe the most important one, it frees up your best people for actual innovation.
This all sounds great in theory, but how do you actually make it happen? What does it really take to build a system and, more importantly, a culture around this idea of reusable intelligence?
It really comes down to discipline and sticking to 4 key principles. First, modular design. Basically, breaking big problems into small, independent pieces. Second, standardized interfaces, so all those little pieces know how to talk to each other. Third, great documentation, because a building block is totally useless if nobody knows how to use it. And finally, rigorous testing. You've got to be sure every single component is rock solid.
So in a lot of modern tech companies, this whole process has a name: platform engineering. It's the job of building the internal factory that creates all these standardized frameworks and tools. The platform team is the engine that makes this entire philosophy possible. It's a real shift in mindset, from thinking about my team's code to our organization's assets.
And that brings us to the most important point of all. This is not about replacing humans with generic parts. It's the exact opposite. By standardizing the boring, repetitive, foundational stuff, you free up your most valuable resource, your people's creativity, to go tackle new, harder, and way more interesting problems.
And that's really the thought I want to leave you with today. By adopting this building block philosophy, we're not just making things faster or cheaper, we're literally raising the starting line for what's possible. So the real question becomes, if we're not bogged down rebuilding the basics anymore, what incredible things will we be free to create next?